All right, it's the top of the hour, so we will get started. Obviously, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Stephanie. We're thrilled to kick off today's webinar, How to Build Customer Experiences Faster Without Sacrificing Innovation. Obviously, super excited to have Tim here from the Drupal Association. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please feel free to send them in the Q&A tab, and I will be more than happy to help you. If you have any questions for the presenters, this is kind of, we can make this what you guys make it. So feel free to ask us any questions, shoot us any comments as we go along. We are happy to have an interactive webinar here with you. And then slides and recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email within the next few days. So we certainly invite you to share with any colleagues that might be interested in as well. And without further delay, I'm going to pass it over to Tim to kick us off.
Hi, so it's great to be here, and I'm glad to be presenting alongside Maggie at Acquia, and here talking to you about low-code site development and the benefits it has both for business use cases and developer use cases. I put a quick note in chat just asking where y'all are from, so feel free to interact with us that way too, and with your fellow attendees. And with that, I believe Maggie's going to get start off with just the why of low-code site building, what it is, and where you can make use of it in your own projects.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, and great to see all the attendees joining in. It looks like some people are still filing in. So thank you all for joining. And just to reiterate what Tim says, definitely drop anything into the chat or the Q&A throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to get to all of your questions. And, feel free to just have a conversation as well. Always open to that. And yeah, again, I'm super happy to be back on another webinar with Tim. Some of you might have already checked out our last webinar back in September about Drupal development best practices. If you haven't, definitely feel free to check that out. It was a really good one. Again, had lots of great engagement, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. But without further ado, I'll kick it off with our topic today. And I really wanted to go into the why of low code for site building and give a little bit more context for those of you who might not be as familiar with low code site building, or maybe you're thinking, why would I even consider that in the first place? And so to start off, right, I just wanted to kick us off with some market trends, some things that we're seeing, some things that analysts are discussing today. And the first is all about how the buyer journey is really moving online. And this encompasses both B2B and B2C use cases, of course. So, our customers are more and more engaging with our brands and choosing to engage with our brands online. And a lot of this has to do, and I hate to bring up the buzzword, but COVID has definitely been a big driver of this, at least in the past 8 months. But even before that, right, we were seeing buyers be more and more interested in engaging with brands and organizations, leveraging different online platforms and digital platforms. And of course, right, they're not just going online to get just a generic experience, right? They're really looking to get some quality content to fuel every stage of their journey throughout the buying process, right? From evaluation to that ultimate purchase of a product, and even beyond that into advocacy. And so really at the end of the day, delivering that content as quickly and effectively as possible is really integral, right? We need to be able to respond to current events, be able to launch different products, different sites, and even applications faster than ever to accommodate for, again, that demand from all of, again, these people, these customers and prospective customers who are engaging with our brand. So it's really all about the evolution, the transfer from in-person to online engagement, delivering that quality content and doing so as fast as possible. And in order to do this, as effectively as possible, right, it's always been really all about that central developer, really at the center and the heart of delivering this content out to all of these experiences. Again, whether it be, on your main.com, maybe a mobile application or other platforms that you elect to deliver your content to. And so the challenge there isn't just enabling that developer who eventually ends up getting pretty bogged down with all those requests from the marketing team and other contributors to your digital experience. It's about enabling your entire team to contribute. So not just looking at your technical users, but also looking at some of your digital marketers or perhaps some members of your brand team to contribute to this experience that you're delivering across all of these different platforms to your customers, which at the end of the day helps to enhance and again, really create that quality content that your customers are looking for when they engage with your brand and your organization online. And so when we look at, who are we really talking about? I toss out some names, and of course you'll see, a bunch of different titles up here. They may be applicable to your organization, they may not. So, feel free in chat to drop in, maybe some other titles that you would say are more applicable. But what we're typically seeing, right, are those developers and builders contributing to each phase of this life cycle. But there are so many more people within our organizations that are part of delivering that experience to customers every day. Anywhere from platform administrators and information security, making sure that those experiences are both performant and secure, but then also bridging into some new emerging personas who are really starting to, and users, right, internally, who are really starting to contribute to this life cycle. So personas like site builders, this is actually something that resonated with myself in a past life. I actually ended up contributing slightly, right, of course, with less coding knowledge to our web experiences, to our digital experiences, but I didn't have as much coding knowledge. So I would never consider myself a developer. I'd more so consider myself a site builder. Even digital marketers, right, on a day-to-day are starting to want to spin up, landing pages for, say, this webinar, and other different types of experiences, again, to help drive those digital marketing campaigns and other initiatives. And then finally, experienced designers, right? So designers being, really caring about that look and feel of the holistic experience, making sure that that's consistent and is following all of the brand standards that they're setting forth, right? So there's a ton of different personas who are internally engaging with this experience. And really, low code is all about enabling all of these personas and no longer just putting all the weight on the shoulders of our developers and detracting from some high value work that they might be working on. So I kind of started to get into this, right? But what are really the benefits of low code site building? Why would you really want to implement this, as it relates to all of those market trends that I covered? And I think it comes down to, two real main points, right? Enabling your developers to innovate faster by taking, again, that weight off their shoulders of all those many requests coming from all of those users within your organization that want to be contributing to the digital experience. And then second, right, which flows right from that point number one, is allowing marketers and other business users to contribute to these experiences, leveraging a low-code solution. They don't have, or they might not have, as much technical knowledge as it would take to contribute to a typical digital experience, to a typical CMS. But by leveraging low code, it actually enables them to integrate themselves into, again, the delivery of this quality content we're looking for our end users to experience. And so, who can use low code? So I painted the picture previously, right, of all of these different personas. And the goal of low code is to enable everyone, that you see here, and maybe even more users than are listed on just this slide, to interact and to contribute ultimately to your experience. And again, what's holding them back? I think we covered a lot of this before, right? But by relying on just a few team members, right, spinning up new sites takes a pretty long time. And it's going to involve many members of the team ultimately stemming into that one developer group who's tasked with launching that site. And of course, when we go back to those experienced designers, we touched on, the importance of maintaining your brand across all of these new sites. So if you're really looking to deliver at speed, ensuring brand governance across these many sites that you might be spinning up could be difficult, right, at the end of the day. And so as you scale, there needs to be a way to enforce brand governance. And finally, I'm sure that you've heard of some low code site building tools out there, but a lot of these low code tools aren't made for an enterprise, right? They're not made for an enterprise site. They're not secure enough. They might not abide by compliance standards that your organization needs to follow. And of course, they're not made to really be have that performance necessary to handle the amount of traffic that your site might be getting on any given day. And so ultimately that goes back to delivering those experiences quickly, but also consistently to your end users. They don't want to go to your site and wait, even a couple seconds for that experience to load. And lastly, right, there are some enterprise options in market today for low code, but oftentimes these can be really hard to get up and running and integrated with your current experience. So when we look at all of these, drawbacks today, all these things that are holding your team back, it really comes down to, once again, taking the weight off of the developers, off of these key builders, and allowing them to innovate by spreading the workload over and giving more power to digital marketers, to experienced designers. And again, that might be someone on your brand team. And then, of course, those ambitious site builders who might just be part of your digital marketing team and have taken that initiative to become more immersed in delivering your sites, delivering digital experiences, and are really looking to, again, take that initiative and help out those developers to make sure that, again, all of that work doesn't come down on their shoulders. And so when we talk about why Acquia Site Studio, really going back to our drawbacks, right? It's all about distributing the workload. Acquia Site Studio is a low-code site builder at its core, right? And it's going to, again, work with your Drupal application right out of the box. And so business users will no longer need to, go to those developers and bother them every time they need, even a small layout change, or they need just a quick update to some of the content on one of the pages. They're actually able to go right in and make those adjustments in a low code, just a UI. And of course, for those brand managers who are concerned about brand governance across all of the sites, there's actually a master design system that's deployed across all of the areas of these sites that are, excuse me, sorry about that. And this is how you know the webinar is live, everyone. So yeah, of course, one master design system. So this is deployed across all areas of the website that's deployed through Site Studio, right? So anytime you've got those business users going in and making these changes, you don't have to worry about them using a crazy color. Maybe someone's favorite color is hot pink. They want to throw that on the website. Well, the master design system is going to make sure that they're abiding by all of your brand standards. So you're enforcing brand compliance across all of your sites, or brand governance rather. And then finally, right, because Acquia Site Studio is sitting atop your Drupal application, it's going to come with all the security and all the performance from Drupal, as well as any compliance standards that you've implemented onto your Drupal application. So all of that's already taken care of. And finally, of course, I mentioned this in the beginning, but it's ready to use out of the box, and it comes with over 50 unique templates and styles and UI components, so that as you're building out, right, you've already got these preset templates. And then there's also the option for your developers to go in and create new templates, new styles, or new components that are really specific to your brand and your vision for your site. So those can be reused as well and added to your component library. And just to give you a little idea of what this looks like, right, you can actually see someone going in this little animated GIF. And they're actually changing, again, the title color. You notice that the brand colors were already in there, as well as the brand fonts. So there's no coloring outside of the lines. Everything is, again, abiding by brand standards. And you can also see now they're testing the responsiveness both on a tablet view as well as mobile. So you're able to see all of that, again, right in Site Studio. And this is all done, as you can see, in a UI with no code involved. So with that, of course, this is all great. And I've mentioned a couple times what this means for developers, but I'd love to pass it over to Tim to take us on a little bit of a deeper dive for around the value for our developers.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Maggie, and I'm happy to do that. Um, if you don't mind, I'd actually like to step back to the slide you just showed because I'd love to talk a little bit about the evolution of content management, right? So if you're watching this webinar, you're probably already a Drupal user or you're heavily considering it. And of course, you're in somewhere in the CMS landscape, right? And if we go back 15 years, the original innovation of using a CMS for any kind of digital experience was that sort of editorial ability, right? You weren't hand coding HTML and CSS. You had an admin backend, and you might wonder, okay, well, what's the difference between those original editorial CMS features and what we mean by these new kinds of low-code solutions? So a good way to think about that is these are the next evolution of the trajectory that started at the beginning of the CMS and at the beginning of digital experience design. We've gone from, you don't just type your WYSIWYG paragraphs in and upload images to certain fields. You can get as flexible as what you see here, selecting from palettes of predefined header styles, font sizes, fonts, colors, these whole sorts of things, which gets you through that next level. I've certainly had this experience, and I'm sure everybody on this call has had this experience of designing, as a developer, we build a feature set for a landing page. In my case, we're promoting Drupal 9 perhaps. So we build out this nice set of tools for our development team to hand off to our marketing team to try and put this in. And inevitably, someone will come by and say, gosh, I really wish we could switch that to that or put that image on the other side. And the standard CMS backend tools don't quite do that. We began evolving in that direction with the use of Panelizer in Drupal 7 and the start of layouts and things like that in Drupal 8. But we're still reaching the peak of that evolution, and that's where these low-code tools come in and are really innovative. So it's a cool trajectory, and it's a big part of where I see digital experience going. So if we continue, why is this good for the developers, right? So obviously, if you've got a development team, this is probably their reality, right? We've all installed some new productivity tools, in scare quotes, productivity tools like Slack, like other kinds of things to interact with each other. But as you can see, WebChick here, Slack becomes another set of inboxes, or rather an unlimited number of inboxes with an unlimited number of notifications that are always coming. And this has a real impact on your development team, right? Your developer might be more than happy to go in and make a significant layout adjustment or change some branding element that's not accessible in the normal CMS backend because it's just embedded in a theme. They might be happy to do that for you, but it's certainly creating an interruption and it's preventing them from innovating in a significant way. There's an image, if we go to the next slide, that has been floating around the internet since 2013 of the effect of a 5-minute interruption or a 5-minute task. And this is by no means limited to its effect on developers, but it's a good example, right? There's this recovery period, of course, for every ask that you make across teams, whether it's a marketing ask to your development team, or even the act of the marketing team having to sit and say, oh gosh, can we do this? Or are we going to have to ask someone else? So the impact of all these little things, all these edge cases that you can't quite accommodate for in your default setup, in your default CMS backend with your current tools, is this like aggregate of 5-minute interruptions with 45-minute consequences that all turn up into a much bigger issue. So our goal, if we continue, is to try and make the productivity of your development teams more stable by providing tools to prevent those interruptions. Any category of these broad interruptions, like, oh, I need a branding change, I need changes to header styles, I need, can it be eliminated as a whole category, right? That might have been, oh, it only came up once or twice a month, every month, forever, until you build in some tools and systems that allow the people who need those changes to make them directly. That's where these low-code options come in. So I'll talk a little bit about best practices, because if you're here and you have an existing Drupal site, or you're considering moving to Drupal and you have an existing history of design features and assets and brand that you need to bring into this, there's some things that you should account for and know. I want to note at the top of this that Acquia Site Studio is like an amazing tool for doing this, but it's built on a lot of fundamental building blocks that are in Drupal already that you might already be using, and therefore it should integrate reasonably well, right? So the layouts subsystem of Drupal for managing where components like live on screen and all sorts of things, it's using those core features. So if you've built on top of those features already, and now you're considering these sorts of low-code solutions, you shouldn't find yourself butting heads against an incompatible system, right? So, okay, let's talk best practices. Whether you are implementing a sort of whole top-down low-code site tool, or you're just evolving existing features to empower more users, one of the most important things to talk about is your permissions, right? So you want to manage your permission model from a product perspective, and oftentimes your development team will be very possessive over the websites they create, right? It's a fault of the development community that we often think we often have a stronger sense of ownership than the people who have to live in there and write content using the features we built every day, right? So it's hard to let go, and it makes it much easier both to make that transition from a possessive development team to an empowered content editor team if you have a robust role and permission system, and that also enforces standards that you might need for editorial review in your team, for security and compliance issues and things like that, right? So very basically, you can see like if you're using the content moderation workflows, setting up particular roles for editors and authors, the ability to transition between workspaces. These are things that you can integrate probably into what you're doing already, and also use together with some of these low-code site building tools, right? So you can take the, if you're a developer and your team is going to implement a low-code tool like the Acquia Site Builder tool, you can use these permission schemes to be even more fine-grained, right? You can say, this role can do those specific types of branding changes. This role has access to that master design level. This role is focused on more of the content side and individual types of layouts. So modeling this all from your roles and permissions point of view from a product perspective is really important to making this low-code experience feel like it is an enhancement to everybody's productivity and empowerment without becoming a wild west of everybody going in and changing stuff. So if we keep going, you should also consider, as soon as you have started empowering your non-developer users in this way to do significant features other than just basic kind of text and image attachment updates, you should begin integrating those users into your, effectively into your CI/CD process, right? Your site builder workflows become part of your integration test, because once you have created this low-code feature, you're going to have a day when you are doing a total rebranding, right? You're going to have sometime 2 years down the line where you're doing a complete change to your corporate brand, or where you're adding a significant new feature or a significant new subsite. Your development team and your designers and your themers are all going to work there. But if you fail to have a validation step with the people who've been using these low-code tools, you're going to regress back to a situation where you have now disempowered your users again, and you're back to your developer Slack inboxes on top of inboxes, all with notifications every hour of every day. So one of the things that I do recommend is that you have an explicit, this is often a product owner role is what people call it, but you should have an explicit role from one of your site builder type editors, one of your low code solution users, to validate any additional changes and new features. And also you should conceptualize those new features from the perspective of the site building tools that you're using. So again, when we talk about a rebranding, as you saw in Maggie's short GIF of the tool set, you can predefine color palettes and swap out those headers using that master design system. So like, make sure you're taking advantage of those, because then if that's how you've implemented the change, it immediately becomes available to all these users. So if we continue here, Maggie's going to talk about a couple of real world examples of users who have implemented these kind of practices in a successful way at an enterprise scale, which I think is the part that is always a question mark in our minds. Can it really be done with teams that large? So we'll talk through that, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit about what else you can do with the time saved by empowering these content editors and other users.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Yeah. And I'll keep, my portion really short. I actually went with one of our customers who presented at the latest Acquia Engage. If you didn't catch that, I believe that there are pre-recordings out there. But to give you a little preview, and apologies, this is not loading. And the fun of live demos. Well, I can talk through it. So that's completely fine. I know this story like the back of my hand. The customer's name is Close Brothers, and you can actually find their case study on the Acquia.com site. But there are some new developments that I wanted to give you all a sneak preview of. But Close Brothers is a longtime Drupal customer and also an Acquia customer as well. So they started with their site pre-Drupal. It was pretty simple. And then that site evolved from, of course, that pre-Drupal. Then they chose to go with Drupal 6. Again, still staying with a pretty basic site format, and then eventually migrated over to, or upgraded to Drupal 7. And now they've even made the transition to Drupal 8. And in that migration to Drupal 8, they wanted to take a different approach, right? And going back to really the value that I articulated about Acquia Site Studio and any low-code site builder for that matter, is they actually went ahead.
Sorry, Maggie, I've got the slide up if you want to let me try sharing, and I can.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Get it working.
Perfect. Yeah, and while I'm talking, so essentially what they chose to do when they migrated, perfect. And if you'll go to the next slide, that would be awesome.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah. So you can see the evolution that I was talking about there, right? So 6 to 7. And then for 7 to 8, again, they chose to make this change to the way that they built these sites out. And so instead of just using Drupal natively, they said, hey, let's check out Site Studio and let's see how, again, we can integrate different business users and ultimately deliver sites faster. Because what they noticed is that, their customers really wanted, again, that content to be delivered digitally, and they needed to be able to spin up sites in response to customer needs quickly. And so, Tim, if you'll actually flip to the next slide, one of the most recent web pages that they spun up was in response, again, to coronavirus. And talking about coronavirus business loans. And this is something that was super pressing, right? At the beginning of COVID, every business out there was worried about, what the impact would be. And so Close Brothers only took 3 days by leveraging Site Studio to design and launch an online application for these government-backed loan schemes. And so it gave their customers all of the information they needed in a timely manner to make sure that they were informed about what it would take, again, to obtain these different government-backed loans. So, this is a really great example of a use case, again, for Site Studio, and really the speed that can enable, as well as, making it easier for their organization, for all of the members within their organization that contributes to these digital experiences, again, to help spin up these sites faster. So if you're anyone on the call, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about some of the work Close Brothers has done, especially their D7 to D8 migration, and how Site Studio helped to accelerate that process as well, definitely check out their case study online. As well as their Acquia Engage presentation. They're really doing some super cool things out there. And I think that, this 3-day timeline speaks for itself in that, they're really at the forefront of agility when it comes to delivering experiences. Cool.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Maggie. So to go from here, right, we've understood what this low code site building tool means, like what its value is, how we can empower other users on the team, and how it kind of represents the continued evolution of what a CMS-backed digital experience platform should be doing for you. But going back to that developer experience, like what can you do when you have that kind of time back, right? So I'm going to run through a few thoughts and ideas about either recent innovations or helpful investments of time that I've seen from other Drupal users throughout the ecosystem, or that we've used ourselves at the Drupal Association, that I think would be worth your attention and worth engaging with your development teams to see, is there some way that we can take advantage of these or integrate them into what we're doing now on our current Drupal sites. So I'll run through a selection. This won't be a technical deep dive into any of the individual topics, but if any of them really do strike your interest, I would encourage you to search on the Drupal Association YouTube channel. Some of these things have had sessions at previous DrupalCons. The upcoming DrupalCon Europe in December is an all virtual event. So no matter where you are, you could attend and find a technical deep dive on any of these kinds of topics. So one is going back to what I talked about just earlier about the permission schema and things for how you manage this. You can also add an additional layer to what you're doing. So workspaces and content moderation can go on top of or in parallel to a low-code solution, or be used on your existing Drupal site if you don't have a low-code solution implemented yet. And this is what allows you to do the sort of full combination of things, full page drafts, like full whole landing page area, not just individual node drafting, and also to have moderation states that can be then integrated into your permission scheme. So you can say, this category of user has approval before something is truly published, but this other user can still go in, edit, make those changes directly on site, rather than in a Google Doc that some final publishing user has to ultimately take care of, which I'm sure we've all done and probably will still do from time to time. You could also invest some time if you can pull that developer time back into fundamental features in performance. We've said, Maggie made it clear at the beginning of this presentation how important it is that the solution that your customers see is immediately present, loads quickly, allows them to do what they want to do. Even a short loading time is now extremely frustrating when we're all on our screens all the time. We're used to an app-like experience where you push a button and get an immediate response. And you can absolutely do that on the web, and Drupal has amazing tools built in. The big pipe rendering system and the dynamic page cache context are really good things to read up on if you feel like you need a performance improvement. But what I want to highlight here is there's a specific feature with these cache contexts. So Drupal's doing a lot of default caching that's amazing. But if you have a special feature that you've built and it, the way that data is rendered is a little bit outside the norm for how some other data might be, you can define these custom cache contexts and take even a really complex view with a lot of different information and make it extremely snappy. So that's a great place to invest some time. Another thing to think about, and this is very much more forward-thinking sort of futurism, for those of you on the call who are just wondering kind of what's the next evolution of web presence. So, we have this full sales cycle as a digital experience. Everything is occurring, front to back in the digital experience. What's coming next? What's even further down the road? And so one of the things that I have been keeping an eye on and that my team has sort of brought to my attention is the advent of WebAssembly. So WebAssembly is an upcoming sort of standard / language that has cross-browser support, that is a way of building interoperable interfaces across languages and operating systems and modules, so that you have this kind of two-way communication. And it's very, very interesting because it's going to lead to a future where you might have applications running at the edge of your CDN written in WebAssembly and talking back to a Drupal site, to something running in C, something running in Go, and all these things and aggregating together. So it's going to probably form the future basis of a lot of sort of decoupled like experiences. But instead of just being a presentation layer and then a Drupal content layer that are decoupled from each other, it's going to be this future of micro application layers integrated into other things, integrated not only with your Drupal site, but with supporting applications. So this is sort of cutting edge stuff. It's not fully implemented in a lot of places, but I think in 2 or 3 years, we're going to be seeing a lot of people talking about this and beginning to implement this. And if you can pull that time back, you can kind of be on the forefront of that wave. And then, of course, the last thing that you can do if you freed up developer time is you can contribute back to Drupal. So this is something that is great for retaining talent. Every developer I've ever met wishes that they were given some time to contribute back to open source. It's really motivating. It's good for professional development and learning. On Drupal.org, there's plenty of ways to get involved, either by contributing to modules that you use in your own implementation, or looking for novice issues or initiatives that are currently going on. Drupal.org recently, and by recently I mean Tuesday, added a merge request contribution workflow. So it works just like pull requests on GitHub now. You don't have to do old-fashioned patch workflows or anything like that. So yeah, if you could get some of that time back, consider spending it on 20% contribution time and using that as a professional development opportunity. I think that's really helpful. I also want to highlight some things to keep out for. So Drupal 9.1 is on the horizon. It's coming out in December. So it's actually less than a month away at this point. And there's some cool stuff going on there just to be aware of. So there's updates to the media management, which goes along very nicely with some of the low code stuff. There's new tools for how you select and reuse media, whether it is, and it's not just like your own uploaded image files. It can also be like remote video feeds and things like that. And that should integrate, again, nicely into the other work you're doing. There's been changes to Composer, which if you're building a modern Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 site at this point, you're probably using Composer for your build process, right? So, Composer is the command line dependency manager that pulls in everything for Drupal. And you'll probably be thrilled to see that there's full support for Composer v2 now in Drupal, which means that everything is massively faster, uses way less memory, and it's going to just be an easier experience to keep doing dependency management in Drupal moving forward. So just a few things for your development teams to have an eye on, and hopefully have more time to think about and take advantage of going forward. Really quickly, I'll just skim through a few more things. PHP 8 support is hopefully coming soon as well, and PHP 8 is in its 4th release candidate. So that's just, again, something to be aware of, to have on the horizon. There's significant performance improvements, and Drupal is moving towards supporting these things. It would be amazing if you use custom modules, making sure they work on PHP 7.4 or PHP 8 can get you free performance. It's a great way to spend time. Similarly, Symfony and underlying subsystem of Drupal has some big improvements that'll be supported going into Drupal 10. And now that Drupal is in this easy upgrade cycle, right, your upgrade from 8.9 to 9, or eventually from 9.9 to 10, are all just as easy as any other minor upgrade. So it was really great to see that come together.
Tim, just to chime in there too, we had a customer, again, at Acquia Engage Pack 12. They actually executed their Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 migration in just 45 days using one of their more junior developers. They experienced page load times. They were down by 41%, so that's awesome, right? So pages loaded a lot faster, and then their backend performance gains of around 47%. So really awesome, tangible results just from executing that 8 to 9 migration.
Right, and again, the 8 to 9 transition is so much easier than the 7 to 8 one might have been. So it's a really great thing to be able to keep up with and keep taking advantage of some of these new features. I also want to mention for folks out there who might be the ones considering Drupal, who haven't used it yet, or considering Drupal together with the Acquia suite of products, there's some new tools that'll be coming out in 9.1 as well, including a new default theme, which even if you're not going to use a default theme, I think rarely does an enterprise or even a medium scale organization use an out-of-the-box theme, but it has some great examples of how to do branding and theming and modern user interface design. So you'll see some beautiful, very sensible, responsive controls using grid layout. You'll see great hover states and active states for primary and secondary buttons that are all fully accessible and keyboard navigable. You'll see ways to do nested menus that now have default examples instead of things you have to go looking up because Drupal didn't have the default examples. Built-in right to left character support, all these sorts of things, which again, you're not going to use an out-of-the-box theme most likely, but they're great examples for implementing this support in your own custom theme work. And it's unbelievable the quality of this new default theme code and the level of effort that went especially into the accessibility side. So with that, I think we're just about ready for some questions. I'm afraid I lost the Q&A window when we switched who was presenting, so.
No worries. I actually had a couple come through that I saw. It looks like people are more active in the Q&A box rather than chat. Just for everyone online, if you joined us late, feel free to contribute your questions to either. We've been monitoring both. But Tim, during yours, I did see the question of what are the differences between Drupal 8 and Drupal 9, and when would you recommend making that migration?
Oh, that's a great question. So particularly if you're already on Drupal 8, you are basically ready to go to move to Drupal 9. There are some tools out there that'll help you. So stepping back briefly, the 8.9 update of Drupal, which is where you should be if you're fully up to date on Drupal 8, has an identical feature set to 9.0. The only difference is 9.0 is removing some deprecated code and making some performance improvements and getting the APIs ready for the new features that are coming starting, say, in December with Drupal 9.1, right? So that 8.9 to 9.0 transition just sets you up for success with the 6-month feature releases that keep coming with Drupal 9. And I would say now is the time. There's no reason to wait. It's not a big, scary migration the way you may have thought of the 7 to 8 transition. It's actually significantly easier. The only thing to check is if you have custom code, custom modules, you need to make sure that they're not using those deprecated functions that were taken out of 8 in favor of new ones for 9.0. And there's an automated tool called Drupal Check that you can use to scan your code. It'll even generate patches for the most common deprecation changes. So in a lot of cases, for example, there's a one-line fix and your 8.9 is compatible with 9.0. So more than half of the Drupal contributed module ecosystem just needed a one-line fix for that compatibility change. So you should find it pretty easy.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Tim. The next question that I saw come through, it says, I'm already an Acquia customer. How do I get access to Site Studio? So I'll take that one. So if you're an Acquia Cloud Platform Enterprise customer, then you actually already have one Site Studio license included in your subscription. So definitely check in with your account manager about that. If you're leveraging Acquia Cloud Professional, that's definitely a chance to reach out to sales. You do have to again, be on Acquia Cloud Enterprise to leverage Site Studio. So I'm sure our team would be happy to chat with you about what that would look like as well. And there's a ton of information on our site about Site Studio if you want to dig a little bit deeper. And it also works for Site Factory. So if you happen to be a Site Factory customer, you're also good to go. And you've got one subscription so you can start playing around. Cool. And then the second question was, my site's already created. What are some use cases for me to start leveraging Site Studio? Okay. But it said low code. So I mean, Site Studio or low code, if your site's already built out and you feel like, it'll remain fairly the same, right? Over the upcoming, maybe even for the next year, a great place to start playing around with low code could be, any type of campaign site. So I mentioned, for demand generation, it could be anything from, a webinar landing page that you might spin up. That's a great place to start playing around with a low code solution, maybe creating a template for those webinar landing pages. So any kind of campaign site, also a portal, right? Like a customer portal would be a great use case as well. So tons of different use cases that you could, start thinking about low code. And then, of course, one of the places where I see customers starting to get more and more interested in integrating low code is with a D7 to D8 or D7 to D9 migration. It's a really natural fit to kind of reevaluate the way that, you build that application to actually naturally wedge in a low code solution. Really great time to evaluate that. Tim, I saw you nodding. Anything to,
Yeah, big +1 to that, right? So even from just the fundamental Drupal core feature set point of view, if you're making that 7 to 8 transition, a lot of the foundational technology that makes this end user empowerment possible with better layout support and better editorial tools and better media handling, all came with that transition to 8. All those things that things like this low code builder tool are built on top of, all came in that support in that release. So it's really, really worth the time if you're going to be making that transition to evaluate your roles within your organization and who's responsible for these content areas and implement those tools that are going to make those work processes better.
Awesome. Cool. I didn't see any other questions. Tim, did you see any that I might have missed?
I think that's it. I think we're good to go.
Awesome. Then I think we can pass it back to Stephanie to close us out.
Yes. So thank you so much, Tim, for joining Maggie and I today here. Obviously, always so happy to work with you. And thank you all again for attending and actively participating. As a reminder, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com, and we'll also share them with you via email within the next 2 days. If you have any additional questions for Tim or Maggie, feel free to send them to marketing@theacquiateam.com, and we'll direct them to Maggie or Tim. Otherwise, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks again. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.